Australia. What is our history, and how old are we really? A lot has happened in the last 200 years, but we're going even further back. We're already 2,000 years into the past, but we're still going further. Indigenous Australians are believed to have lived in Australia for up to 150,000 years. They are part of the longest running culture in the history of humankind. Basically, the Indigenous Australians live very simple lives. They didn't build houses or use the land the way we might be used to. They didn't stay in one place, instead moving around a lot. For tens of thousands of years, this is how they lived. When Captain Cook arrived from Europe, he saw Australia as an unclaimed land. Because the Indigenous Australians did not have houses or streets or anything like the cities in Europe, Captain Cook claimed Australia for the British. And so the Indigenous Australians were pushed to one side as more and more Europeans arrived to colonise Australia. Australia's population never really grew until the 1850s, during the gold rush. People came from countries all over the world to try and strike it rich on the goldfields. Australia's population more than doubled between 1851 and 1861 as a direct result of the gold rush. But not everyone was lucky enough to find gold. Many diggers struggled badly, and when mining licenses were introduced, the diggers became angry. In 1854, a huge group of diggers got together to form a rebellion against the government. They created their own flag, called the Eureka flag, which represented the ordinary people's struggle for their rights. But the rebellion ended when government troops successfully stormed the Eureka stockade. Despite this, the government heard the cries of the people and made many changes to improve life on the goldfields. In 1901, Australia officially became a country in its own right and held its first parliament on the 9th of May. Edmund Barton was the first Prime Minister of Australia. Two of the biggest events in Australia's recent history are the two World Wars. When World War I broke out, Australia honoured its allegiance to Britain, and many Australian men went to war. The fighting took place in Europe, a long way from Australian shores. But it was when World War II broke out in 1939 that Australia really became under threat. The Japanese were invading south down the Pacific towards Australia. The Japanese even reached Australian shores when Darwin was bombed. Australia rejoiced when Japan finally surrendered and the war was over. In 1967, Australia finally passed a referendum that acknowledged Indigenous Australians as citizens. Most felt it was long overdue, but were happy that it had finally happened. Then in 2008, Kevin Rudd apologised to the Indigenous Australians involved in the stolen generations, marking a historic day for our country. It was cause for much celebration, and another step towards reconciling the troubled past of Indigenous Australia. Australia is changing constantly. New events happening all the time. It is good for us to look at the past, let us try to compare what will happen.
life has drawn you here. Feel the warmth pulling you near. Breathe it in and let it fill your heart. It's like love, cleanse your soul. Feel it in your veins. Breathe it in your lungs, will stay. It's like love for the first time. Your love makes sense, you know. It's like love, cleanse your soul.